Good morning, folks. It's March 18th, 2014, 2:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is a special edition, and we will probably run over 3 minutes, so that's okay. We have some important things to discuss. I've been receiving a lot of emails from people that are really caught up in fear. It's affecting friendships, it's affecting marriages, and I think that we need to pour some new thoughts into our heads, some spiritual thoughts, so we will stop focusing so much on this fear that's being peddled on the internet and through a lot of different agencies in the news and alternative media stations and some watchmen and things like that. I mean, we can't focus on fear all the time and how will I survive and things like that. 2 Timothy 1:7 tells us, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline." So we are not supposed to be imbued with the spirit of fear. And if that's taking over you, you do not have the right spirit in you, okay? And if you're focusing too much on the affairs of this world, 2 Timothy 2:4 tells us, "Soldiers don't get tied up in the affairs of civilian life, for then they cannot please the officer who enlisted them." And that means you can't get caught up in this material world. I see people thinking in a material way, not a spiritual way. Now, Ephesians 6:12 tells us, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." So what you're seeing here is another form of life, another form of energy. When I say that, I'm not trying to sound new age. I've been accused of that just because I've made the point that energy is the fabric of all matter, and they go, "That's new age." It's accepted scientific understanding right now, and we shouldn't be afraid to say it. So that's what it is. I mean, how do we define the undefinable anyway? And I think that this isn't 2,000 years ago. We can use current language and based on our understanding of where we are today. So that's really it. This is a spiritual war. This is something that is not of the flesh and blood. That means that it's not material. And 2 Timothy 2:4 tells us not to focus on the affairs of this civilian life. And the question is, what are we supposed to be doing right now? And 2 Timothy 2:15 tells us, "Do your best to present yourself to God as one approved." Study and show yourself approved, basically. It goes on to say, "A worker who does not need to be ashamed and who correctly handles the word of truth." Now that's a very important word right there, is truth, and we must accept it, and we must rely on the word to find our truths. We can try to define the truth, and some things it's going to be beyond our scope. I mean, the Most High tells us that He lives higher than us, and His ways are higher than us. So we are encased in flesh and blood, and we're going to have some trouble figuring some things out when it comes to Him, and He doesn't expect us to understand Him. But we know we should be following the Word. Now, something that's very important, that if you do study and find yourself approved, we can segue into Luke 21:36, which says, "Be always on the watch, and pray that you may be able to escape all that is about to happen, and that you may be able to stand before the Son of Man." And what that is an escape clause. If you are found worthy and you have studied and found yourself approved, we may be able to escape all this horror that we're seeing right now. And there's the silver lining right there. There's a promise made and a promise kept by the Most High. But this is only going to happen if we study the Word. It is time to stop relying on pastors, preachers, watchmen to tell you what the Bible says. And I'm not telling you to go get the Bible and read it from cover to cover. Maybe just find a book that you want to read in the Bible, like the book of Timothy or the book of John, and just focus on one book at a time and read it, and you will see, you will begin to have insights, and it will begin to work inside you. It will begin to change your outlook, and then you're going to be a fact checker. When you hear people say, don't judge. I didn't want you to judge. Well, John 7:4, I believe it is, and it says, do not judge by appearances, but judge correctly. If our ancestors didn't judge correctly, they would have been food. You would have had men walking up to saber-toothed tigers and saying, pretty kitty, pretty kitty. But because they judged correctly, they did not end up food. So let's make sure that we're looking at the right things in the right way, and we're doing it steeped in the Word. So I think there's greater things inside us, and I think that we're missing some things. I just did a story on the rise of ancient street magic, and it's coming back, and I think that there's a YouTube producer by the name of Zendrius with an X, and he's captured some great footage of these magicians, and they have to be working with spirits. Some of the things, especially when we look at the fact, unless this is a setup, one of the magicians read a woman's mind, told her about someone close to her that recently passed away, and in her hand she was holding two chalkboards turned in on each other where the sides of chalk in there, and the spirit had written a message to her, so that came from her friend that had passed on allegedly. So I think that's very important in the sense that it relates to what we're capable of when you look at John 14:12, which says, very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I've been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I'm going to the Father. And not that we would be greater than Jesus, okay, that's impossible, but what he was telling us is that we would be able to do the things that he does and more acts like them, because he's going home. He's going back to his kingdom. He's going back with his Father. And I think that's what we're missing right now. I mean, we're not really doing what these street magicians are. I mean, they're being true to the principles of mastering the spirits, and they are working with them, and there's some type of mastering going on. And I think this isn't outlandish to even think of, because if we look at the fact that Moses had his magic fighting battle in front of Pharaoh, and Pharaoh had his magicians throw their staffs down, and they turned into a snake, and Moses's staff turned into a bigger snake and swallowed their snakes, and the magic was over. They were like, "You took our snakes, dude." I mean, that was just so plain that it's possible right now. So I don't think there's anything crazy to say right now. I remember having a conversation with a woman on Facebook, and I was telling her about John 14:12, and she corrected me, and she said, we are not gods. And I think that was the feeling, that you have to be gods to do what Jesus promised us we could do. I mean, why did he tell us that? I mean, was Jesus wrong about that? I mean, this is something that we have to think about right now. What are we missing? And I think the problem is right now that we're convoluted with too much fear. I think we have too much fear in our system. Everything that we're doing is fear-based. We're watching the news and we're looking for the next bad thing to happen, and how's that going to affect me? I mean, I live in New York. How am I being affected by the Ukraine right now? What exactly can I do if war jumps off? I mean, I think there's more than 33 wars going on right now in the world. What can I actually do? Pray. That's it. And it's probably the most powerful thing. Not probably, it is the most powerful thing. And that's what we have to get back to. We have to go back into our books ourselves. If you have a high school degree and a GED and you can read, then you're qualified to read the Bible, and you can pray that the Holy Spirit comes into your life. And from there, you listen intuitively to that Spirit, and things are going to manifest in your life. You're going to begin to shed the negative things and the negative people that are going on in your life, that are around you right now. You're not going to be able to tolerate lies, and your truth is going to be able to correct people and push them away at the same time. People don't want to hear the truth. The best way to lose a friend is to tell them the truth sometime, and it's very sad, but it's true. People have to learn how to deal with the truth, and that's what's so beautiful about 2 Timothy chapter 2 verse 15 is about, where it says, present yourself to God as one approved, and you don't have to be ashamed, but You have to handle the word of truth. And that's what Christ was all about. He came to bring supreme truth, to correct all things, to correct laws of man that weren't in conformance with truth. I mean, look at the scene with Mary Magdalene. She was caught in the act, of adultery, and it was standard operation procedure back in the day to stone someone. They were shining those rocks up. They probably had a bowling ball bag full of stones. Everyone showed up with their little, probably stoning sandals on and ready to go. And Jesus basically told them, that law is no longer going to be practiced. They asked him. He could have said, sure, stone her. But he didn't. And he changed the man law at that time of killing. No more killing, no more conflict. We don't have the time to focus on these external things, and there's too much external activity going on and not enough internal activity. When's the last time you heard a message like this? I mean, I have to check myself too, because I see myself putting up too much external news and not enough stories to help people go within. We have to get to the point where we're in a state of peace. We're at peace with everything that's going on around us, because we've been given the ultimate contract where if we study and find ourselves approved, and if we are found worthy, we can escape all these things. And that should be the first goal, escaping all these things through the Father, through Spirit, through understanding what we can do by using the spiritual principles and applying them to ourselves. And again, when I say spiritual principles, I mean no conflict. I mean forgiving. I mean loving. And I mean everything that's going to fall under the umbrella of positively charging ourselves with the right thoughts and the right emotions. And it's not going to be easy. I fail every day. I mean, by 7:30 a.m., I'm probably up to 10 cents if I haven't had my coffee. And that's how things are. So I think that we're just on the wrong track. I really sense it right now. There's so much materialism going on right now. There's the focus on that is just we're on the wrong path, and we need to turn away from that. So look, thanks for listening. I hope you got something out of this today. I hope there was a good message in there for you. We know I probably beat a dead horse talking about fear and what it's doing to us, convoluting us, but remember that this is a spiritual war, and this is a spiritual path, and we need to have spiritual thinking to deal with it for ourselves. We need to activate our spiritual minds more so than our material minds. And yes, we're trapped in a material world, but that does not mean that we are not spiritual beings. So I will get back to the regular 3-minute news tomorrow, and you won't have to listen to too much talking. And thank you so much for listening.